Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up a topic that's incredibly timely, really critical, actually. Biological invasions, especially now with global change accelerating everything.
It really is a huge issue. And we're going to guide you through a key piece of research on this. It's a consensus review led by Anthony Ricciardi, published back in 2020 in Environmental Reviews.
Right. The title is Four Priority Areas to Advance Invasion Science in the Face of Rapid Environmental Change. So this isn't just one study. It's more like a strategic map drawn up by a whole team of international experts.
Exactly. They brought together leading invasion ecologists, and the big question they tackled was, where are the crucial gaps? What are we missing? What do we urgently need to figure out?
And they pinpoint this core problem. Globalization is just flooding the world with non-native species at rates we've never seen before. It's threatening biodiversity, economies, even human health.
And the sort of hard truth is that our current biosecurity systems, well, they were built for a slower world. They're just not keeping pace.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Unpack these four priority areas.
Yeah.
These are the places the experts say we absolutely have to focus our efforts if invasion science is going to adapt to, well, the Anthropocene.
Let's dive in.
Okay. Priority number one, prediction. It seems we're getting better at predicting how a species might establish itself, survive the trip, get a foothold. But predicting its impact, how much trouble it'll actually cause, that still seems incredibly hard. Why?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It boils down to a really tricky statistical pattern. We generally assume, and it's mostly true, that the vast majority of non-native species, maybe 90–95%, they don't really do much harm, negligible effects.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
there's always a but. A tiny fraction have absolutely enormous, sometimes disastrous consequences. The paper compares it to something like an inverse magnitude frequency distribution.
Yeah.
Think earthquakes. Lots of tiny tremors, very few massive ones.
Right? So like most introductions are just noise, but a few are the catastrophic signal we're trying to detect.
Precisely. And if you spend all your resources tracking the hundreds of mostly harmless ones, you might miss the one that's going to cause ecological economic chaos. It's a resource allocation nightmare.
So how do we get better at spotting that signal, the high-impact invader?
The biggest hurdle is what scientists call context dependency. An invader's impact, how it behaves, how abundant it gets, who it interacts with it, can change dramatically depending on the specific environment it lands in.
So a species might be completely benign in one place.
And an absolute menace just, a
Yeah.
few hundred miles away in a slightly different ecosystem.
Yeah.
That variability makes prediction incredibly difficult.
And I guess time plays a role, too. It's not always immediate.
Absolutely. That's another really tough part of the time lag. An invasive species might hang out quietly for years, even decades, not really causing any obvious problems. And then, boom, something changes, maybe a subtle shift in climate, maybe another stressor arrives, and its population explodes, becoming incredibly disruptive. Those lags just completely undermine short-term risk assessments.
Okay, so prediction is tough. The paper suggests a couple of theoretical angles to sharpen it. What were they?
Right. They highlighted two key hypotheses to explore further. First, the environmental matching hypothesis. This one's pretty intuitive.
Okay.
It basically says an invader's impact will be greatest where the abiotic conditions, things like temperature, rainfall, soil type, closely match its physiological sweet spot. It's optimal.
Right. If the conditions are perfect for it, it's going to thrive and likely cause more disruption. Makes sense.
Exactly. Put the star player on their home court. The second idea is a bit more about the community context. The functional distinctiveness hypothesis.
Functional distinctiveness. What does that mean?
It suggests that an invader will have the most severe impact if it's functionally different from any species already present in the native community, if it brings a totally new skill set, so to speak.
So it's not just about the invader being strong, but about the native ecosystem being, well, unprepared for its particular tricks.
Precisely. It links directly to this concept of ecological naivete. If the native plants and animals haven't evolved defenses against the invader's specific way of life, maybe a new way of eating plants, or a toxin they've never encountered, then the ecosystem is vulnerable. Novelty equals severity, often.
That idea of novelty and unpreparedness feels like a good bridge to the next priority area. We're moving from just the invader and its immediate surroundings to these bigger external pressures. Priority 2 focuses on synergistic stressors and climate change.
Yes, this is where things get really complex because threats don't just add up. They can multiply each other's effects. Climate change isn't just happening alongside invasions, it's actively making invasions worse. It's a massive facilitator.
How so? What's the evidence for that?
Well, there's growing evidence suggesting that many non-native species are actually better equipped to handle rapid climate shifts than native species are. They often have broader tolerances or can adjust more quickly. They seem almost pre-adapted for instability.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about freshwater fish. Studies, for instance, in France, found that during severe droughts, non-native fish species often survived and even thrived much better than the native fish.
Wow.
And in mountain ranges, like the European Alps, researchers have observed non-native plants moving uphill, tracking the warming temperatures almost twice as fast as native plants can manage. They're quicker to grab hold of those newly available climate niches.
So it's not just the gradual warming, but also the extreme events like heat waves, floods.
Exactly. Those extreme climatic events, think massive floods, Category 5 hurricanes, prolonged heat waves, they act as huge disturbances. They knock back native populations, opening up space and
And
resources.
to move things around too, right?
Yes, they physically transport organisms.
Yeah.
Hurricanes have been documented spreading things like the non-native cactus moth across Caribbean islands. Huge floods can flush species like zebra mussels way downstream into new river basins. These events are major invasion pathways and facilitators.
And there's a difficult irony here, isn't there? Sometimes our attempts to fix one environmental problem, like climate change, can actually create new invasion problems.
That is a critical point the paper raises. Many large-scale climate adaptation or mitigation projects like massive tree planting campaigns for carbon capture often rely heavily on fast-growing non-native tree species.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. And some of those chosen species turn out to be highly invasive themselves, escaping the plantations and causing ecological damage way beyond the intended area. You end up trading one problem for another.
Does this apply to things like rewilding too? Bringing back species or proxies?
Absolutely. Proposals to introduce non-native species to fill ecological roles lost when native species went extinct, say. Bringing in a non-native tortoise to replace an extinct giant tortoise as a seed disperser need really careful risk assessment, like using the IUCN's EI-CAT framework for impact classification.
So it's not just about good intentions.
Not at all. And these de-extinction projects, trying to create genetic proxies for extinct animals. Ecologically, that's basically introducing a novel, non-native species. We have little idea of the potential cascade effects. Caution is essential.
Okay, so predicting impact is hard. Climate change is making it harder. But what if we don't even reliably know what species we're dealing with in the first place? That brings us to priority 3, the taxonomic impediment. It sounds almost quaint, but why is basic species identification still such a bottleneck?
It sounds basic, but it's fundamental. We have a growing crisis, a deficit in taxonomic expertise. We simply don't have enough trained people who can accurately identify and formally describe species, especially the less conspicuous ones, and that expertise is eroding.
But surely modern tech like DNA barcoding can fill that gap.
It helps, but it's not a magic bullet. Not yet, anyway. There are two big problems with relying solely on molecular methods right now. First, the barcode library itself is incomplete. We lack reference sequences for vast numbers of species, particularly in biodiversity hotspots.
Okay, so the library is missing entries.
Exactly. And second, the entries we do have, they're often inaccurate. Studies have found that significant chunks of sequences in public databases are linked to misidentified specimens. So, if your reference library is flawed...
Your automated ID system makes mistakes? Garbage in, garbage out?
Precisely.
Ah.
And the sheer scale of what we don't know is mind-boggling, especially when you get down to microbes. Some estimates suggest Earth might host up to 1 trillion microbial species. A trillion. Most totally unknown.
1 trillion, that puts the challenge in perspective.
It really does. And even for things we can see, like insects, there's a huge gap. The paper mentions a study looking at thousands of fly specimens using DNA. They found evidence for over 650 potentially new, undescribed species.
Wow, 650 new flies from one study.
Yeah. But guess how many have been formally described and named using traditional morphology since then? Just one. There's a massive lag between molecular detection and the formal description needed for science communication and, importantly, regulation.
And that lack of basic ID knowledge has real-world consequences for managing invasions, right?
Absolutely critical ones. If you can't reliably identify something quickly, early detection, which is key to stopping invasions, fails. Ecological studies tracking things like hybridization between native and non-native plants become unreliable.
And it impacts trade and food security.
Definitely. Take the invasive walking catfish. Apparently, it's notoriously difficult to tell apart from some native African relatives just by looking at it.
So if a customs officer can't easily distinguish the invasive one from a legal import.
Exactly. It creates a loophole for illegal trade, which helps it spread through aquaculture escapes, amplifying its ecological impact. Misidentification is a serious barrier.
Okay, so if identifying every single organism perfectly is a massive, maybe impossible task right now, perhaps the way forward involves coordinating our efforts on a bigger scale, which leads to the final priority, enhancing international biosecurity cooperation.
That's the strategic shift. In our globalized world, one country trying to seal its borders against invasions just isn't enough on its own. We need to think and act internationally, especially understanding the bridgehead effect.
The bridgehead effect. Can you explain that?
Sure. It's the observation that new invasions often don't originate directly from the species' native range. Instead, they spread from other regions where the species has already successfully invaded and established. These established populations act like bridgeheads or hubs for further global dispersal.
Ah, so it hops from invaded area to invaded area using each success as a launch pad.
Exactly. The classic example is the harlequin ladybird beetle. It's native to East Asia, but its invasions into Europe, Africa, South America, even Western North America, pretty much all of those secondary invasions originated from populations that first got established in Eastern North America. That became the global bridgehead.
Okay, ecologically that makes sense. But the proposed strategy getting countries to cooperate to control invaders in those bridgehead regions sounds politically tricky. Why would country A spend money cleaning up country B's invasion problem, even if it reduces the risk for country C down the line?
That is absolutely the crux of the political challenge. National biosecurity programs are, understandably, focused on national self-interest. The paper calls these situations wicked problems because different stakeholders have fundamentally conflicting goals.
You mean like, say, the plant nursery industry wanting to import potentially risky but popular ornamental plants?
Versus conservation groups or maybe ranchers who have to deal with the consequences if those plants escape and become invasive weeds, damaging ecosystems or pasture land. Their interests clash directly.
So how do you overcome that?
It requires really systematic effort.
Hmm.
Better international data sharing, transparent risk assessments that everyone trusts, and finding ways to negotiate compromises. It means shifting focus from purely national benefit to recognizing the shared global benefit of tackling invasions at key strategic points, like those bridgeheads. Easier said than done, of course.
So, pulling it all together, these four priorities, sharpening prediction, understanding synergy with climate change, fixing the taxonomic impediment, and boosting global cooperation, they're all deeply interconnected, aren't they?
Absolutely. You can't really solve one without addressing the others. It requires bridging disciplines, ecologists, talking to climatologists, talking to taxonomists, talking to policymakers, and really accelerating the development of invasion theory itself. We need more dynamic understanding.
I think a key takeaway for you, our listener, has to be this idea of invasion debt. It's a sobering concept. Even if we get much better at biosecurity today, even if international cooperation improves dramatically overnight,
We're still locked in to seeing more non-native species establish themselves in the coming years and decades. That's because the processes, the initial introductions, the slow spread from bridgeheads are already underway. It's like an ecological debt that's coming due.
an ecological mortgage we didn't realize we'd signed up for, maybe.
That's a good way to put it. And maybe final thought to leave you with, something the paper touches on. Think about the global response to SARS-CoV-2. For all its complexities, we saw an unprecedented level of rapid international sharing of data about its spread right from the earliest stages.
Yeah, that was remarkable, scientifically speaking.
It showed that when the political will is there, when the urgency is recognized, this kind of global, real-time tracking and data sharing is possible. So the provocative question is, what other biological invasions out there? Maybe a crop pest threatening global food security, an invasive forest pathogen, even unseen microbial threats warrant that same level of urgent, coordinated global surveillance and response. It shows us what could be achieved.